You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome, everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It's Thursday, July 31st, 2025. It's 7:35 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And one of the topics that comes up quite a bit, particularly in the recovery community, but also sort of across the board, is the concept of inner child work, which I thought I might talk about in terms of meditation and also in terms of attachment. Sometimes it comes up with internal family systems work or parts work. And it's a little bit different in the way that we work. When you talk about parts of self or the reaction of aspects of self, and you're in the meditation frame, of course, our purpose is to see the nature of self as insubstantial. And so reifying parts or aspects of the self actually isn't useful in that frame. What we want to see is that in each moment we make a reality based on the conditions of the present moment, but also our reaction to the present moment in terms of meaning, which is based on our conditioning. And because some of those early threads of meaning go all the way back into early childhood, depending on what particular meaning the body mind comes to in each moment, can have those aspects of early experience. So we have the capacity to sense something, touching, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling. And then you have the aspect of mind, which actually curates this highly selective sampling of what's currently happening in the present moment based on preference. So we tend to give a lot of focus to things that we prefer and short shrift to the things that we don't, to the point that we could just leave them out altogether. And then it's processed for urgency. Does it need immediate attention? Does it not matter if we ever get to it? Is there time for a pleasant experience? And then a queue of mind moments forms. And when each mind moment gets to the top of the queue, it's compared to the perceptual database of previously assigned meanings. And these tend to cluster in threads. I like to call them threads, or I guess it's the easiest. The mind tends to cluster meanings that are similar together into this thread of meaning. And if that thread of meaning attaches to the mind moment, it solidifies or it fixates into conceptual reality. And we see in the nature of the self experience the witness to that process of making each moment into a meaning or a reality. And sometimes those states can be quite childlike. If you're toward the disorganized ends of things, things are pretty fragmented anyway. And so the dividing things up or reinforcing the idea of parts is can be problematic in coming into this whole experience of making in each moment the meaning that we're making. The Buddha said, of course, that suffering comes from clinging or grasping or grabbing. Dan Brown used to say, grabbing the sense moment and reifying it into something real rather than seeing that you've made meaning out of it. And in the next moment, you're going to make another meaning out of it. And in the moment after that, you're going to make another meaning out of it. And there should be some evaluation in terms of what meaning you're making, or even in that big, expansive view, watching the meaning coming and going as you're assigning it to the sensing experiences. what you'll also notice is that some of these memories can take on a quality of experience. You remember yourself doing something. I was browsing on Facebook before the class started, and there was one of those flashback photos of me that somebody else had posted and tagged me in from a wedding that I attended in, I'm going to guess, 1979. And the most intriguing thing about it was, I don't remember having those sunglasses, but they looked pretty Italian. Uh, Funny. I was wearing a linen suit, and I do remember the suit. Uh, but it was hard to remember me, my sense of myself then, so long ago. Each moment, of course, we remake that sense of self, that sense of the witness. And you can imagine yourself and imagine those qualities of a child. Imagine that wonder of a child that you were, the innocence of that child that you were. Can you remember the time in your life before anything bad happened? Or maybe the bad stuff started before autobiographical memory. And so it's just always bad. Or a mix between bad and other things, good, neutral. One of the there's a lot of different ways to work with those qualities that when you create in the moment a sense of self that's quite childlike. One of the ways that we often work at it is a kind of metta practice to really emphasize that sense of self. So if you know how to do walking loving kindness practice, it's a kind of stroll. You just sort of flow in movement, and you set it up maybe 20 feet apart, the 2 points. And as you're walking in one direction, you're visualizing yourself as a small child, and you're radiating the loving kindness to yourself as a small child. And then when you get to the end and you're standing on the point, you sink into the quality of yourself as a small child. And then you turn around, and in that quality of the small child, you look across and you see yourself the way that you are now. And from the child perspective, you offer loving kindness to yourself as you walk the 20 paces or so. And then as you reach the end, you settle into the sense of yourself as you are now, and then turn and look and see the child at the other end and walk back and forth as a way of integrating the experience. And then the other request is that you begin to understand your point of view as you're walking back and forth, neither as the child or as the way that you are now, but how you view yourself as either the child or as the adult, so that you can center into the experience of each moment just being this activity of being that then can fixate into these ideas of one or the other. And so some people can easily find the child self. Some people can easily identify themselves the way that they are now. And some people have this third thing of the sense of who you are, which is different than the way that you appear to yourself. Is that making sense? So that you begin to have the insight into the nature of self being this construction, not this thing, not this unchangeable thing. you know that we don't hold on to any of this stuff very tightly because our processing is too slow. We have a sort of fuzzy logic, a general sense of how we are and how other people are, so that we can adapt to each version of it. If we had to remember how each version was and filter through all of them in order to recognize somebody, we wouldn't be able to do it. It's a sense of somebody else. It's a sense of who we are, which is different than who we are. Have you noticed that when you regard yourself, that sense of who you are also changes quite fluidly based on the conditions of the present moment? Everything is a reaction to the conditions of the present moment. So we begin to hold that quite loosely. Can you think back to a time when nothing bad had happened yet? There was an innocence about you, and a wonder about being in the world. And can you actually hold the experience of yourself in that way? Because another way that we can work with this is to really come into the experience of that child self, that wonder, engage with ideal parent figures in relationship to that child, and then to see ourselves the way that we are now, holding the experience of everything that's happened, and then allow a kind of merging to happen so that we can touch into and hold the experience of that innocence, that wonder in this adult frame that we're currently in. What was it like to be you? When I first got sober, so this is a while ago, 1978, it was quite bewildering the first few months because it had been a long time since I had been in a sober state of mind. And so I said to my sponsor at the time, why am I saving this person I hardly know and probably won't like? What am I supposed to do now? Maybe it was a better way of framing. When you were a child and you developed the physical capacity to move yourself around, you also began to develop the capacity to explore things that were interesting to you. Prior to being able to move yourself around, you probably couldn't explore too deeply. You've been around children, small children. In the beginning, I like to call it the blob stage. If you're the caregiver, you put the kid down, and you come back 20 minutes later, they're still there. Because they can't get anywhere. Do you remember a time? You don't. This is a rhetorical question. You don't remember a time when you couldn't sit up. You don't remember a time when you couldn't roll over. You don't remember doing the tens of thousands of little sit-ups to get yourself strong enough in the core that you could sit up. You could roll over. You don't remember doing thousands of little push-ups, the thousands of little leg lifts that you did in order to be able to creep. Creeping is where you sort of drag yourself across the floor. It's like swimming, except you're laying on the ground. And then you get a little bit more strength and you can get up on all fours. And this is when everything changes, right? You can see the world outside and you can actually get yourself to get over there and take a look. And what needs to happen then is this reassurance from your caregivers that they'll be there when you get back. This is really one of the great lessons in exploration, that you can leave and you can go explore, and you're confident that when you get back, the people that you count on for your survival will still be there. And if you have enough of that reassurance, then you can be brave and you can crawl off and begin to look at things, discover things, and explore things. And if you don't have that reassurance, you can't be brave enough to go and to begin to explore. So very early in our lives, that crucial support for us to begin this process of exploration is there or isn't there, and it changes everything. And this is, 14 months or 18 months old when this begins to happen, so you don't remember it. But we can infer what must have happened to you based on your capacity to do it now, because this is where that heart begins. And so if you didn't have that kind of support, one of the things that we can do now is begin to imagine that kind of support. One of the things about the nature of the human condition is that imagination is crucial to all of this making of reality, because we're often in novel situations where we don't have any understanding of what's happening. We need our imagination to come in and create a meaning and create a sense of what it is. That process of making meaning includes, what is my intention to respond to this? What action might I take? When I take the action, what happens? I gather the results of what happens and I store it in the database. It changes the database, and then I can use that discovery to inform what I'm going to do in the next minute, response I'm going to take to the next set of circumstances, over and over each moment. And when you're good at exploring, of course, you're good at making an intention for action, taking an action, gathering what happens, modifying your understanding, and then in the next moment, forming an intention, taking an action, gathering results. And it's this very fluid thing where you don't really hang on the results so much beyond it informing you what you're going to do next. Not making sense. But when that's interfered with, and it's difficult to form an intention to take an action, it's difficult to take an action and you gather the results, it's not fluid. There's a kind of resistance that gets built into it, a resistance to respond, a resistance to take action, which impedes the capacity to explore quite a bit. We talk about exploration as primary and secondary exploration. When you were a child, you still had primary exploration desire, but you also had the burden of the family system and what the family wanted you to do and what the family valued, what that sense made. And did you get a pretty good deal where your caregivers paid attention to you and the things that interested you and the things that you were good at doing, the things that you wanted to do, that you enjoyed doing? And did they funnel you into those kinds of activities, or did they have an understanding of what it is they thought you should be doing? And did they funnel you into those? And what was the balance like? For instance, when I was a kid, all children played the piano because there was an understanding that if you played the piano, you would be better at math. And so it wasn't so much about music, but it was about learning the capacity to do math better. And then in my family, of course, we learned sing-along songs so that we could play the piano and everyone could gather around and sing along. But I hated that music. If there was a choir that specialized in people who can sing 3 notes, maybe it would have been better. I wanted to play classical music, but that wasn't the direction. So I'm pointing that out. Not because I'm still bitter, even though I still am. Uh, but that this shapes everything. This is that shaping. When I said, "Can you remember a time when that innocence, that wonder at being alive, was uninterfered with?" Uh, it, it can it will depend quite a bit on what happened. The maybe we should call it in a different way. Sometimes I talk about it as authenticity, that childlike authenticity, that innocence, that you can just say the thing that you want to say, that you can express the thing in the sense of self and world as you understand that in the moment, and because you're confident that the people around you that matter to you won't abandon you, you can be spontaneous and free in that expression, that experience. But if you don't have that confidence, and there was a pressure to achieve, or a pressure to perform when you were small, then that's going to factor into your capacity to be spontaneous. When uh, I say this, I think every time I talk about this kind of stuff, because I just it always struck me as a brilliant comment of my friend Jimmy McCord, who's a writer, said, "How do I know what I think until I hear what I say?" That level of spontaneity that you hear at the same time what you're going to say when everybody else hears what you're going to say, that would be totally spontaneous. We have that the sense of self, and the understanding of what's happening takes processing, and that processing takes about a half a second, but you can get a few words out by the time that unfolds. And you can be listening to yourself talking, and at the same time the other person is hearing it, and it's just completely open and free, but at the same time you're monitoring their expression, so that if you go completely off track, you can catch yourself in time before there's a disaster. The thought occurs to me, uh, this this capacity to love also comes about in this sense of wonder and innocence, this aliveness, um, being this human being in relationship to other human beings, and how stunning it is to express yourself authentically with this freedom, and to be completely confident that the other person is going to receive it, and respond with a sense of delight and a sense of gratitude, even that you're willing to express it to them, since it's so unusual in the adult world for people to be so freely authentic. That sense of confidence that's embedded in that wonder. So, touching into that, the main way that we begin to repair that, those injuries to that part of the development process, is using the ideal parent figure protocol and visualizing into that sense of the child self, and then visualizing the reaction of the ideal parent figures that support and encouragement that we need in that. And part of it is also to understand what happened to us. Children need from their caregivers these qualities. And when we don't get them from our caregivers, there's a sense of summing it up, I like to call it, where we have to make the arithmetic work, and the parents have to be good parents. And so we often sum it up where the reason that these things didn't happen for us was because some failing of our own in relationship to them. So part of the process of maybe repair isn't the best word. I often think recovery is not such a great word for all of this because oftentimes it was never there. So it didn't get broken. It just never happened. It was never supported. It never developed. There's nothing to recover because it didn't happen. This is the first installation of all that stuff. And we can take care in installing it now. You can now. There's not a time when it's too late. There is some rueful recognition that if you do it late in life, that you missed having it earlier, which I think is true. Can you see clearly who your caregivers were and what resources that they had and what they were able to offer you? And can you see that in relationship to the needs that you had from them, the needs that you had for that child, that filled with wonder and excitement at the world, and begin to understand it at a deep level, whether they offered it to you, whether they had it to offer to you or not. And I think in most cases, what we begin to see is that these things that we needed from them that were perfectly ordinary, that any child might need, was something that they didn't have to give us. And that's the reason that they didn't provide it to us. It's not that they had it and decided that we weren't worth it, that they were going to withhold it from us. And I tend to call that hapless parenting. This is not always true. Some people do have sadistic parenting. And so we'd like to make a clean division between the two, because these expressions that apply to people who had hapless parenting do not apply to people who had sadistic parenting. In sadistic parenting, they did intend to hurt you, and likely succeeded in doing so because children can't really defend themselves. And that also was not your fault that happened. You didn't do anything to cause it to happen, and you likely couldn't have done much to stop it from happening. But that's different from the caregivers who didn't have what it is that you needed, didn't provide it. So in either case, what I'm suggesting is that you give up on them. You give up on getting the needs. One of the things that continues to cause sorrow in relationships to family is the longing, the continued desire for these needs to be met. And so we want to see clearly that we have these needs. The family isn't going to be able to meet them. And so we need to turn toward people who can get our needs met. And what that often does is open up the experience of the family in a way that what they are able to do for us the expressions of love that they are able to make, the expressions of care we can receive without them being poisoned by the stuff they can't do for us, the stuff that they didn't do. Is that making sense? And then we can have those moments of receiving love and those moments of expressing love and it not being compromised. It's hard to overstate how much a child wants their caregivers to think that they're wonderful, to delight in them. And so if we can find a way to that, it's useful to us. But not if you had sadistic parents. Then you need to step out of the firing line and recognize that aspect. It actually takes quite a bit longer if you had sadistic care to come out of it than if you didn't. When we were doing these walking mettas, heading toward the child and heading toward the adult, we did find that there was a break usually that was very aligned with the gender conditioning that we go through, and that the males had a really hard time walking toward the child self, and the females had a really hard time walking toward the adult self. The males condemning the child self at never actually being good enough and never competing well enough, and then the female side looking at the adult self and finding fault in how you stack up against these cultural touchstones. And so coming into this sense of who you are and finding in yourself this sense of delight, really connecting into that child self and finding delight in who you were, not in any sense creating a false representation or a representation different than the way that you think of yourself as a child, but coming into this place of compassion at who that child was and what the world was like for them, and the way that you responded, and coming to this place of deep regard for this child that you were, the sense of delight in how you manage this world, to just really come into this place of love for that being that you are. Makes sense? So that you find the experience of yourself quite touching, quite moving. Good place to get to. So lots of IPF, lots of loving kindness, lots of compassion for self, right? If you grow up in adverse conditions, what's likely to have happened is that you've created a working model of self that's difficult, and you've created a working model of the world that's difficult. And so when we engage in the cultivation of intentional positivity, we begin to balance the positive and negative of our experience of self. And we don't want to stop in balance. We want to go over onto the positive side and just completely lopsided onto the positive side, so that when the sense of self arises, we actually enjoy the experience of it. Dan Brown used to call that the root cause of self-love is that you enjoy the sense of self arising in any circumstance. And conversely, The root cause of self-hatred is when the sense of self arises, it's largely a negative experience, and that you begin to develop an aversion to a negative experience arising over and over again, and so that you stop wanting it. They're not good ways to prevent the sense of self from arising. The main way is to simply withdraw from the world, withdraw from stimulus, to distract yourself from that. And you may have noticed that our culture is really monetized distraction like amazingly. I like to say I have 15 streaming services and there's nothing to watch. I actually think of it as a blessing that I'm old enough to have missed video games. It was Pong, this very slow beeping thing that was not that engaging. uh, all the dopaminergic trance things that we can engage in just to let life go by without having to engage in the painful parts of that. Whereas if you can construct a sense of self that you delight in, even in the painful parts, you don't need to escape from it. You can just be in the experience of it. In the addiction community, that withdrawal from stimulation to regulate the sense of the self, the reactivity of the self, of course, leads you completely socially isolated. In other communities, that withdrawal from engaging in authentic expression isolates you. And we are pack animals. We are meant to live in complex social groups. Our whole physiology is constructed that way. And to withdraw from that actually is to cause ourselves pain. And so a lot of us who withdraw from the stimulus of life in order to regulate that negative self-experience end up living with these high levels of pain that dissolve completely when we are in those rare moments of connection with other people. And I'm not talking about hiding out with other people where there isn't that freedom of authentic expression. A lot of us come out of adverse childhood conditions in transactional relationships where they're role-based, not intimate, or disorganized. And it's kind of a trauma bonding. It's a reenactment over and over again of the trouble. But that place where you can just be spontaneously who you are, an expression of that, and the wonder of that, with the confidence that the people that you express that to are happy that you do. That's who we're trying to pull around us. But the only way to get those people around us is by being authentic, because if we pretend to be something so that they'll be drawn to us, of course, they want the thing we're pretending to be. It creates that sense of disconnection. How's that? Good enough? So let's do some practice. Did you want to do concentration and insight? Did you want to do a heart practice, or did you want to do IPF? 1, 2, or 3? 2. We have a 1 for Metta. It's the problem with democracy, participation. What do you think, Christian? 1. All right. Michelle. Alex, bail us out. There we are. All right. Let's do concentration and insight. Ready to take your meditation posture, closing the eyes. Okay. Let go of the meditation. How'd that go? Wonderful. Let's see what's coming up. Starting on August 9th, which is a week from tomorrow, or a week from Saturday, we have a level 1 addiction series. So for 3 Saturdays from 9 to 1, we're going to talk about our the way that we work with addiction. And then let's see, we're going to do a workshop on addiction on September 5th, on Friday the 5th, at 7:30 in the evening. And then we're going to do 2 of the exploration half days, September 13th and September 20th, the intermediate and the advanced training. And then starting on October 11th, we're going to do a meditation and attachment, level 1, for 3 Saturdays. And then we'll begin our level 2 addiction series on September 15th. The level 2 addiction series meets 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, from 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific time for 12 weeks. And it really is a relapse prevention program. So we focus on the main conduits for relapse, stabilizing. Paul?
George, good to hear so many things coming up. What the 2 workshops in September? What time of day are they?
They're 9 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. Good for you, bad for you.
Very bad for me. That's 2 in the morning until
6 in the morning.
6 in the morning. So yeah, might be a little stretch on the body to try to be awake all night.
Right. It's staying up late or getting up early. Either one doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, it's sort of it's the juggle. In October, it gets much easier because then we go on daylight savings and the US goes off daylight savings, and so it's 4 in the morning instead of 2 in the morning. That's
right. 4 in the morning. 8 in the morning.
8 in the morning.
And if we were to do it in the afternoon, I might consider doing it in the afternoon at 1 cycle.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, you don't need to have this in the podcast recording, but there's a strong, I'm looking to come and spend a month or 2 in Irvine. So.
Oh, nice.
But I don't think it'll be as early as September. The home, I've got to get my house repaired first.
Yeah.
It's going on, or it's taking a long time.
Good.
Thank you for the time frame.
Anyway, that's what's coming up. It's on the website, so take a look at it. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope that if you're resourced and you can make a donation, you will. There's a link on the website to do that. if you can't, that's totally fine. We're happy to have you practice. Good to see you. I'll see you soon. Bye.